Hello everyone, this is Loose Canons. We're going to be discussing 1981's Possession, directed by Andrzej Zulawski, starring Sam Neill and Isabelle Adjani. As always, we begin with what everyone's general positive, negative feelings, impression of the film were.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off. I'm going to have to give it a thumbs down. I kind of enjoyed it when I was watching it, but the more I thought about it afterwards, the less I could remember that I actually liked, that I took away from it. In general, I just thought it was just a really crazy movie without much else to it. I was just like, it just seems like a movie where they went all crazy with it, and that's why people like it, because it is so crazy. That was my general impression of the film. Looking at.
I read something interesting, which is that I believe if you watch the one on YouTube, which is what I watched, that's the American cut, and that they actually cut out. There are some moments that are like slower or quieter, and it's cut more narratively straightforward in the original Czech cut. So the American cut is actually much crazier than the original, apparently.
Maybe I should have sought out more of those different kinds of cuts, because it seems like they.
How long was the version that you watched?
I couldn't tell you the exact time off the top of my head, but it was definitely the one that's on YouTube. It was definitely the American cut.
Yeah.
It was
ballpark figure.
I watched a one that was 2 hours and 3 minutes, and it had subtitles at the bottom, maybe Spanish.
I had an illegal torrent of it, so I'm not sure which version that I saw, but mine was also 2 hours and 3 minutes, so I'm guessing it's the same version.
So what did you think, Basil?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of was into it for a little while, and then all of a sudden just stopped being into it, and I don't know if that's because it was just like too much, like my brain just shut down the ability to process like how crazy everything was. But there was like a moment where I was just like really with it, and I was following along with how tense and just like the camera moving all over the place and all the crazy like fisheye angle faces going nuts, and then all of a sudden I just couldn't be into it anymore at all, and like basically was just waiting for the movie to be over. Although I guess I should say that because of my terrible ability to manage time and remember what time this was actually happening, I haven't even finished it yet. I still have about half an hour left.
I really liked it, but it's almost exclusively like aesthetically. I thought it was really beautiful to look at, and that's sort of like, you know, if you can do that, I pretty much stopped paying so much attention to the other things. I was just sort of like, wow, like the whole time that I was watching it, just in terms of look, even though it had a bunch of stuff that I think, if it didn't look as good, probably would have bothered me.
I will say that Berlin, pre the wall coming down, does look it's very striking. All the architecture in that city is very beautiful, and I did like the way that they shot some of those interiors in that apartment, especially when after Isabelle Adjani has kind of trashed the place and Bob's toys are everywhere, strewn about the apartment. Like I like the chaos of the look of that place. That I guess only carried me so far, and it got to a point where I was just like, I don't know, I was like, why is any of this even happening? Like it felt like it was all just sort of thrown in there. It was like this big gumbo pot of a movie, and I was just like, I felt like the director wasn't doing it for any specific purpose. He was just like, how crazy can everything get at the end? Let's see how crazy we can make it. And then the apocalypse happens at the end or something, and that confused me even more. I was like, what is the deal?
I haven't spent enough time thinking about it to unpack it, but nothing felt particularly misplaced to me, which is strange because it's an alternate cut of the movie that we watched. But it was certainly wild, but it never felt strained in its wildness. I never was tired of it, I guess. I just want to mention that Isabella Genie and Sam Neill made Joan Crawford and Mercedes. What was her name?
Mercedes McCambridge.
Mercedes McCambridge look like cinema verite or Italian neorealism actors. Like, I thought they were intense and over the top and Johnny Guitar, and then we watched Possession, and Sam Neill and Isabel Cheney are over the top. They make Sylvester Stallone's arm wrestling movie look like, I don't know, a Christmas movie.
Like one of those Family Channel movies. There were certain parts of it that I really enjoyed, though, and there were certain lines of it that kind of stuck with me, where I'm like, looking back over the stuff that I read for it too, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this little tidbit that I like that interpretation of what's going on. I know that there's a part where, I guess we should mention, it's the plot of the movie. Sam Neill he does some sort of secretive government work, and he comes home to find out that his wife has been having an affair, and so I guess for the better part of the first half of the movie, you think that this other man is the cause of all her problems, but then you find out that she's been having sex with some sort of weird monster.
Her problems being that she's, like, losing her mind, it seems. Like, everything sends her over the edge. Everything that anyone says to her.
Yeah, she's, like, cutting.
Like, she walks in the door, and, like, she seems fine, and then he says hello, and she's just, like, she throws her groceries on the ground, and it's like, I can't do this anymore.
And then she starts grinding meat and cuts herself with a meat, there's one of those little electric knives, and he cuts himself with the electric knife. There were scenes like that just sort of escalated to weirdness. Although I kind of... That was one of the scenes that I think of, like, I liked it at the beginning, but as it progressed, it got less and less interesting to me. I was like, oh, okay, you could have, like, cut off the end of that scene. Not to make a pun, you could have chopped off the end of that scene where she's grinding the meat in the meat grinder. So I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting backdrop for them to be having a domestic argument where she's just like, you see her grinding this meat and it just makes you really uncomfortable, but then she just starts doing, just off the wall crazy stuff, and I was like, okay, well, it's just weird now. It was tense before, and now it's just weird.
I mean, I would say probably part of the reason why I might disagree with you in the evaluation of this movie is that I don't think it requires you to take it seriously. Moving from tense to, like, goofy, I wouldn't say that it's unintentional or that he made a misstep. Like, I think specifically of the part when the private detective is following her home, and he's, like, in the same subway car, and it's just, like, the two of them, and a hobo who takes a banana out of her bag and eats it, and then he's, like, she's running to her other apartment, and he's, like, running after her, and, like, somehow she's supposed to not think that he's chasing her, and he's, like, running full speed after her up the stairs, but he pretends to run past her up the stairs, and then, like, steps, wildly on the stairs for, like, a minute or two to make it seem like he went upstairs. Like, stuff like that made it pretty clear to me that, like, it moved quickly back and forth between kind of goofy out there and, like, kind of serious. Like, I guess the, like, screaming matches between them, like, at points I was like, oh, this is intense, but at other points I was kind of like, this is like two children fighting over a ball.
And also how they're constantly ignoring or forgetting about their child, or he just disappears for long periods of time in the movie. Like, they're in the apartment and he's just not there for some reason, or they
yeah, I actually
spent like 3 weeks by himself apparently because neither of them came
that
home.
That part was a little, I kind of liked that part. I forgot about that, where he comes home and he's just covered in filth because he's just been eating ice cream or whatever he wants for 2 weeks, and it's that part. It was uncomfortable, but it was also kind of funny.
Everything was filthy in a way that I really enjoyed. The city, like him, like, there would just be, like, trash on the ground. Like, no one would mention the fact that there was just, like, food in their apartment on the ground and the child lived there.
Or when the teacher, who is also played by Isabella Gianni, comes over and the groceries that she left are just, like, still sitting there in the bag. And it must have been, like, a week ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we should mention that it's a weird kind of like doppelganger in the movie. Isabella Adjani plays Sam Neill's wife, whose name is
Anna.
But he also plays their son's school teacher, Isabella Adjani also plays son's school teacher, Helen. So she plays two characters who are completely different people, but they, I think the characters actually realize that they look the same within the story, or at least Sam Neill does. He's the only one who really interacts with both of them.
Yeah, I like that character. I don't know if there was like more to it, but I like the idea of he's like totally obsessed with his wife and the fact that she's sleeping with someone else, and it's like driving him to pure madness. And then he meets someone who looks like her, and he's like totally over it immediately. It's like, I'm still in love with you, or just a reasonable facsimile of you.
I really liked Heinrich, who is the sort of other man, or at least who Sam Neill thinks is the other man, who Anna did have an affair with, who is not currently, like, he also is trying to figure out what's wrong with her because she's losing her mind. And
he sort of looks like Sam Neill. Like, that sort of weirded me out. I thought that was an interesting doppling effect also, that he doesn't look exactly, but he looks very similar in the two when they're like facing each other.
Yeah, but I don't know. I liked him as a character. I thought he had the absurdities to him because he's this.
I loved his dancing.
Yeah, well, he does like this dance fighting where he beats Sam Neill up with dance moves, and then It's weird. He's like a new age guru type guy, but he also lives with his mother, and he's having an affair with this woman in the same apartment where his mother lives, and she knows about it, and his mother has this weird obsession with him. There's
I don't know if you got this far, but she has that great little like bit in the movie. One of my favorite bits when she's talking to Sam Neill, and he's like getting upset at her about being okay with Heinrich sleeping with his wife, and she's like, "He's my son." She's like, "He had a first wife, and I had to like her because he's my son." And then when he found Anna, I had to like her because he's my son. And I was like, that's really nice.
Yeah,
a weird bit of humanity in a very inhumane film.
Yeah, and I think it's also after she finds out that Heinrich has died too. There's that weird like scene where Sam Neill's gonna go. I think he's gonna go like kill her because she's the only witness to where Heinrich went, or like knowing where he was when he died. But
I think she's the only one who knows the connection between.
Oh yeah, him and Heinrich. But she just, it's sort of like, he doesn't have to do that. Like, she's just like, oh, my son's dead. I don't really have a reason to live anymore, and I'm gonna go, just take pills and lay on my bed and die. And I was like, she's like a really sweet character, even though she's kind of crazy. But no, I read something that said that Heinrich was basically, he was every characteristic that the director hated in other men, basically. he was kind of this hippy-dippy kind of guy, but he is also like strong and could beat you up, but he also lives with his mother, and he's also he's such a funny, like, the way he talks and the way he uses his body. It's always like touching himself and like touching other people when he's talking to them. He's got
that
bizarre.
weird.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact.
He's got that.
Yeah.
That's unbuttoned.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had that really good line that I can't remember the exact wording of, but it was something like, "I take what I want and I don't feel bad about it."
I think my favorite part of the interaction between him and Sam Neill is after I think it's Isabella Adjani that shoots Heinrich in the apartment when he first finds out that
he sees the monster guy.
Yeah, when she's like having sex with the monster, he first finds out about that.
She only has sex with the monster, or at least on screen, once, and it's Sam Neill is the one who sees it.
Okay.
When Heinrich comes over, he just sees the monster, and then he sees the the corpse of the private detective on the ground.
Oh yeah. Oh, and in the fridge, like she stuffed one of the bodies into the fridge too.
Yeah, that's not shown, but that was strongly implied that that's.
Oh, I thought that was shown. I think maybe you see like blood coming out of the fridge or something like that. But after he gets shot by her, and he goes into the, he like goes to the phone and calls Sam Neill because it's the only person he can think of that knows like what the situation is. I like that Sam Neill tells him, he says, "All right, go into the bar across the street, stay there and bleed for a little while." I just like that. It's like a fuck you. I'm gonna help you, but fuck you at the same time. Going back to like what I didn't like about it though is that that whole thread with Heinrich I liked, but it keeps just like spiraling and getting weirder from there. And I didn't like the whole part where Sam Neill is supposedly like born again. Like there's another version of him born that has something to do with the monster, and then there's all the government people that he was working with that come and shoot him, and just didn't like that a whole bit.
I mean, I really like the exploding cars, regardless of how I feel about the rest of the ending. When they were like shooting at each other, and then all the cars start exploding, I was like, "That's awesome."
I didn't really get that bit. Like that bit didn't land for me. I was just like, why did they blow up? I don't understand. I read somewhere that he was like making fun of action movies in that scene, but
yeah, that's what I thought.
I just didn't really get it. I was just like, oh, okay, I guess it's not the way I would have done it. It's not the way I prefer to make fun of action movies. I think there are better ways to do it, other than let's just blow up some cars. That's what action movies have, right?
I mean, I know this movie is listed as a horror movie. And then on the YouTube comment, someone said that it was more drama than horror. But I feel like if we're giving like percentage numbers, that it's actually most comedy. And like I feel like it's it thinks that like it kind of lets you take them things as seriously or as jokingly as you want. And like to me, like that's like he doesn't like. I think what I like is that he doesn't sort of push you into like feeling a certain way. You can be like, "Oh, this is so disturbing," or you could be like, "This is so funny." Like, what are literally what are they yelling about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then there's like a scene where it's like 10 minutes where she has like the groceries and she's in the subway tunnel.
Oh yeah.
And she just starts screaming.
And then like
and she like throws
blood
the
and
groceries against the wall.
starts leaking out of all of her orifices.
I
think
I shouldn't be laughing at that, but like it was really funny because it kept going for so long.
I kind of got bored in that scene though, like the amount of screaming. I was like, okay, she's still screaming. I think I actually like went on the internet to check something while she was still screaming. It's like, she's still screaming? Come on.
Well,
most of that is all one
sometimes
shot.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Which is weird, but
and it's followed by it's preceded by this really weird scene where she's standing in a church, just like looking up at this sculpture of Jesus, and she's just like muttering at it and it's not even a language. She's muttering at it in some nonsensical made up language, and I kind of liked the beginning of that whole like subway freak out where she smashes the groceries against the wall and you see like this smear of eggs and whatever else she happened to have in the bag. But I felt like if it had been shortened just a little bit, I would have liked it a lot more.
I think I would have been okay with it being even longer. I gotta say that you bring this up. Best like throwing things in any movie that I've ever seen. Like everything always looked really beautiful when it was thrown. Like when they were in the bar and they were talking and he started chasing her out of the bar and he started tossing the chairs up into the air. And they were just like, I was like, man, there's some really beautiful chair tossing. I was like, I wonder how many times they did this to like get the exact right arc of, balancing the shot with the chair flying through the screen.
I think that's maybe why they used such a wide lens for most of those scenes. Like they definitely make use of those very wide lenses. Everything's very flat. The depth of field is very flat for the majority of those big scenes.
I really liked the way the beginning of that scene was shot, where like they're sitting and they're up against mirrors, but for some reason, because of the way the camera's placed, you can't actually see their reflections in the mirrors until the very end when he freaks out. which, like, it was really confusing to me because it took a long time before I even realized that they were mirrors, because it's just like, I thought it was just more bar behind them, but then at the very end you see, like, other people in the thing, in the bar reflected in it. I don't know. Shots like that were really interesting to me.
I kept wondering how they didn't get the camera in the mirrors. Like, they must have had to do some choreographing to get the camera where it wouldn't show up in any of the mirrors. But I always think about that when I see mirrors on screen for some reason.
I like that most of the son's dialogue was him doing a police siren. He just went, wee-oo, 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 like, most of the film. And I also like that his name was Bob. Like, not Bobby. Bobby is a kid's name. He was already a little adult. He was a little Bob.
Bob.
Like, who calls their son Bob?
I don't know. I did like Bob, though. I liked his interaction with Sam Neill. That's mostly who he interacts with throughout the movie.
I like how they would go back and forth. Like, there'd be a scene of Sam Neill just, like, you know, screaming and cutting himself and, like, being a horrible person. And then, like, the very next scene was, like, him carrying Bob on his shoulders to school. Like, a very typical, like, sweet, like, father and son scene. Like, something you would see out of a romantic comedy where, like, a single father meets a single mother or something like that. And it was just, I liked having scenes like that, like, butt right up against each other.
I also liked how weird some of the dialogue was. Like, I couldn't tell for sure. I mean, I guess it must be intentional, but it had a very odd... One thing in particular struck me really early in the movie when Sam Neill's, like, first back and he's watching Bob play around in the bathtub, and he says to Johnny, come and admire him, and that's such a, like, a weird phrasing, like...
And a weird thing to, like, say, like... Because it's not like... Bob's not a baby, like, when you're still supposed to be, like, impressed with everything that they do. He's, you know, like an 8 to 10-year-old kid, and he's just in the bath. Yeah, it kind of reminded me, like, the dialogue of, like, a manic Samuel Beckett at times. This, like, weird stiffness, this overarching, like, don't be afraid of that, the only thing to be afraid of is God. Like, the conversation would suddenly go to, like, really... issues, but in, like, a really facile way sometimes, which reminded me very strongly of Waiting for Godot, if you've ever read it. Another thing that I liked about this movie.
One thing I was going to say that I wished was that I wish I knew more about, like, Germany and Berlin during this time period, because there were so many shots of the wall and of, like, weird guards standing on the other side of it that I felt like some of it was intended to be some kind of, like, reunification anxiety metaphor or something like that, but I have no idea what was going on culturally in Germany and how West Germany felt about East Germany and everything during this era at all, so I cannot comment on that.
It seems like they mashed together a lot of different nationalities in their cast, because they've got a Czech director, and Isabella Gianni is French. Sam Neill is British, or is
Australian?
He Australian? He's Australian. And then they've got, I guess, obviously the German guy that plays Heinrich. And then I think, remember, the other guys are British, like the private detectives that he hires.
They definitely sounded British.
Yeah, and it's just.
And
like
Bob is British.
Yeah, Bob is British too. And it's this mishmash of nationalities throughout everyone in the film. So. I think there may be something to that.
And the movie's written in English, which is unexpected.
Does anyone have any themes to discuss?
I was trying to sort of hint at that idea, but I mean, because that would sort of but again, I'm just, like, shooting in the dark, because that would kind of explain some of the Doppling effect, the idea of, like, 2 Germanys and 2 Berlins and 2 Isabella Giannis and 2 men competing with each
there
other.
Are actually two. There are actually 2 Sam Neills too.
Yeah,
because he has a doppelganger that shows up at the very end. I guess I'm wondering, like, what is the significance of his job? Like, I was trying to figure out what exactly he did. I guess it doesn't matter if I know exactly what he did, but I was just trying to figure out the significance of, you know, that, like,
Some of it, something had to do with like investigating communists. I feel like because the last thing they ask is like something about the target still wearing a pink tie, which is very.
No, it's pink socks, and the guy shows up at the end of the movie with the pink socks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are way more detail oriented than me.
No,
I would never have noticed that the guy has pink socks at the end of the movie.
Well, no, he like stops in front of the camera and like pulls up his pant leg. And he's got the pink.
Yeah,
he's like,
he adjusts his shoe.
Yeah, he just like looks at it like right in front of the camera. It's like, hey, pink socks. It's like, look right here, pink socks. I was just like,
he puts his shoe back on.
Oh, does his shoe fall off? Is that what, I just saw the pink socks, so I was like,
he takes his shoe off and he puts his shoe back on.
Why does he take it off?
Like he does the thing like this, like there might be rocks or something in it. He goes like this with the shoe.
Rocks could
Shakes
have
it
gotten
out,
his
and
shoe
then
in
he
an
puts it back
apartment
on.
building. I don't. He's running up the stairs in an apartment building and he got rocks in his shoe. I don't know. It was just weird. It was just like, hey, pink socks, right there, right front and center.
The commies are all around us, even those who are looking for them.
I don't know that whole, but it just that whole ending just didn't jive with the rest of the movie for me. It was just like such a jarring like, and now it's a
Even the part where
now it's a spy movie and they're shooting guns and cars are blowing up and I'm like, wait a minute, this was just a supernatural.
even the part
thriller.
where like where Sam Neill doppelganger like is lifted up onto the doorwell by that person and he's like standing on top of the doorway for some reason. Like I thought that was awesome.
Why? It's why like I don't know.
It just because it was I don't know because it just stood out. It just because it's really memorable to me that
but
he was like
I guess I'm trying to I keep trying to like figure out what the director's intention was for all that. I mean, I guess maybe that's his intention is that there is no tangible.
I don't think you have to have an intention for something to still be powerful. It can be emotionally resonant and not something that you need to give words to in order to make it still land. That's it. So
It just confused me, I guess. That's what I'm saying. It didn't land. It didn't land for me because I was confusing. I was like trying to rationalize what was happening in my head. I was like, wait a minute, I'm lost. And I guess that's a feeling that I don't appreciate in a movie, like where a movie just takes a hard left turn, and I'm just like, wait a second, why? What was the means to that? Like, if I could figure that out at some point later, I would probably like, oh, okay, I understand now. But with this movie, it seems so incredibly impenetrable, like what Zulawski was trying to say, if he was trying to say anything at all. I think a lot of what he was doing was getting out some of his feelings over his own divorce, because that's what I read. He was going through his own divorce during this, so maybe he was just trying to like put out there the way the whole divorce felt to him, like the whole idea of divorce or the whole process of getting divorced from someone felt.
If that's the case, I feel like he did at least a better job of it than George Lucas in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Is there a divorce in Indiana
No,
Jones
but he was going
Wolfman?
through a divorce at the time, and that's why Kate Capshaw's character is like just like this horrible misogynist figure of like a dumb blonde woman in the jungle who can't do anything for herself.
Yeah, I mean, I can't quite tell you like overarching like everything that the film means, but there are little things like I was saying about him like getting over his love temporarily for Anna like so quickly when Doppel Anna came along. I think sort of there's some commentary there about men and romance and how they see things. Like it seems like he comes home because she wants to get a divorce, and he was like perfectly happy never seeing any of them up until the point when she didn't want him anymore, and then like his whole life was ruined. And maybe something else there, a little bit about how people see women in those situations where like everything that they do is like nonsensical and like batshit crazy or whatever, that they just start off like assuming that that's, you know, my crazy ex-girlfriend, or in this case my crazy ex-wife. He like literalizes that in a way to make it terrifying, and also at the same time sort of maybe criticize, you know, people acting that way.
And that could go along with like the idea of this monster thing or whatever, like this anxiety about having sex with someone that's not you, and like how disgusting and repulsive you find it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, I wish. I almost feel like the monster itself is kind of like when. I guess the problem that I really have with it is when it turns away from that. Like when that is the main thrust of the movie, the whole idea of that monster. I enjoyed it more, but once it turns away from that and things just start going, you know, weird, and there's doppelgangers of people showing up, and it's a spy movie, or it's a parody of a spy movie, and then the apocalypse starts happening. I'm just like, wait, what about the monster? What happened to all that? Like, where did that go? I was enjoying that more, and now we've gone completely off the rails.
I don't know. I mean, I liked it, and I liked the monster or whatever, but it's kind of like, up through the monster part, to me it was kind of just like a Cronenberg film in a lot of ways. And so then when he completely went on a left turn, I was like, oh, it's not just a Cronenberg film. Like, it's a whole different animal.
Yeah, it was very broody up until that point. Like, the monster reminded me a lot of, like, what's her name, licking the baby fetus. And...
Oh, yeah,
Oh, I thought you were using broody, not to,
No.
not to reference the movie.
The Brood, yeah.
The Brood, yeah. I don't remember the actress's name. No, but...
Samantha Eggert.
Ah, yes.
Eggert.
Samantha Eggert and the Brood, and she has the mutant children. Yeah. Maybe that was it. Maybe I went into it thinking that it was going to be more like a Cronenberg movie. Like, that was what I was getting from it. I was like, oh, okay, it's like, you know, that's the kind of movie it is. And then it takes that turn, and I'm like, wait, what kind of movie is this again? Where, what is happening? I guess that confusion really detracted from the experience for me, though. I kind of lost the momentum, because it built up some good momentum. You know, once it became about, and this is something that happened when we were watching Pain and Gain too. I don't like it when a movie becomes about hiding bodies, like, or trying to get rid of bodies. There's some reason, like, the same thing happened in Pain and Gain. Like, that's where that movie lost momentum for me. Is when they're trying to cut up the bodies and hide them. And in this movie, when they keep going around trying to hide all the bodies of the people that she's killed, I was like, is a body hiding movie now? Like, really, I don't want to watch that kind of movie. Those kinds of movies are dumb, because there's always a scene where somebody's like, oh, this leg is sticking out, let me push it back in there so this person doesn't see, and there's an awkward scene where I've got to, you know, pretend I'm not hiding a body or something like that.
Don't watch the first episode of Bates Motel, which was really bad on a number of levels, but, like, I had that same response to it, where there's, like, they kill someone, and, like, first of all, they kill someone and they decide not to call the police, even though he was, like, he trespassed and, like, came onto the property and, like, tried to rape her. And they can't kill him in self-defense. And then, like, the sheriffs, like, randomly show up for, like, no reason. They're, like, trying to hide the body. It's, like, in the bathtub or whatever. And it's, like, all, like, are they gonna find the body? And it's like, no, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I hope they do find the body, and this just becomes Oz with Norman Bates.
Same thing happens in Bound too.
I really don't like it when that happens in a movie. The only time that I have liked it is when they parody it in Young Frankenstein, where they've got the hand sticking out, and he just puts his arm around the hand, and he's like picking the fingers of the hand. And the guy actually says, "Need a hand?" And he's like, "No, thanks, I already got one." And that's the only time that has worked for me in a movie that I can recall.
It's funny that movie was made in, like, the late 70s, and it continues to be a thing.
I did like when Sam Neill goes to the apartment and he decides to clean up for her. He like MacGyver's a bomb to blow up the apartment. Like,
yeah.
I was like, where did this come from? He's just like, he makes a bomb, blows up the apartment, and then I love it. He's coming out of the apartment, and there's just a woman on the side of the street. She's just screaming. We never like know why. Like, we don't know if she lived there, or he just like walks out the door and just like ah ah. It's like, that's pretty cool. I like when directors include those little details, like old screaming ladies on the street. And I also really like that the private detectives were gay lovers.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I was
like literally no reason to include that. He was like, I should tell you that I have a personal interest in this case because we live together. Yeah. And it was like...
And people are always holding Sam Neill's hand when they talk to him. Like Heinrich and the private detective, both that. Like, they get really close to him and just hold his hand and push it to their chest.
There's also something, I didn't really know the significance of it, but it was something that someone pointed out, that there's this sort of repeated shot of somebody, like, taking someone's shirt off and then holding their hands up, and the shot is from behind that person, so all you see is, like, this part of the person.
I noticed
see, like,
that,
the like, naked body, because he does it when he's taking Bob's shirt off, where he's got all the, like, ice cream and stuff all over his shirt. He just takes it off, and the shot just kind of lingers there. I was expecting, because he's just like sitting there like looking at Bob for a minute, I was expecting there to be a reverse shot and Bob has like bruises on him or something, but it's just him just like sitting there just kind of looking at him for a minute, and then he does the same thing to Isabella Johnny, where he takes off her shirt and she's just like holding her arms up like that, and it's just that same, like, the back of her right there. And I can't remember, I think it happens one more time with a different character, and I'm not sure why. I just thought that was a really, like, weird shot, just because of the way I kept expecting there to be a reverse shot and for us to see, like, whatever they were seeing. They were sitting there looking at them for so long.
Maybe
the Andrzej Zulawski signature shot.
I'm just throwing ideas out there, but I mean, it could be something to do with, like, the idea that he's been gone for a really long time, and, like, he's seeing, like, the whole person and sort of feeling like they look unfamiliar, maybe. Like, he's coming to the idea that it's not, I don't know. I mean, not understanding is pretty typical of Sam Neill throughout the movie, is that he is struggling to understand everything that's going on all the time.
I do really like the scene where I think it's very early in the movie, where we just see him, like, in a rocking chair, just like rocking back and forth as hard as he can. And
it's at the beginning. He's decided to move back into the apartment.
Well, Johnny
he's like, I'm not going to move out.
I was like, what is he doing?
Yeah, it comes directly after that scene too, and then, like, Bob's just mysteriously gone, and he's just rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
But they're screaming about Bob.
Yeah.
She's like, "You're not going to take Bob from me,"
yeah.
And then she disappears for 3 weeks.
And I kept wondering, like, how screwed up that child was going to be after hearing those, like, incredible screaming matches and, you know, having people cut.
He seems like exceedingly normal, like far too normal. Like, he's not messed up at all in the movie. Bob.
Yeah, well, he does have like dreams. I think he has like nightmares.
Oh, yeah, he has that
nightmares. Yeah.
He's gonna grow up to be Michael Myers.
Michael Myers is Michael Myers when he's 6 years old.
Maybe Bob's about to turn a corner and
he just starts screaming in subways. I've heard that subway scene referred to as a miscarriage scene, and I think she says in the dialogue that she miscarried something, so I think she had a miscarriage during that freakout. But
the monster's
that's what
baby.
She's talking. I guess she keeps talking about I can't remember. There was like Chance and something else.
Faith.
Like Sister Chance and Sister Faith. Yeah, and she was saying that she miscarried Faith, I think, on that day. I think that's what she says in the dialogue, if I remember correctly.
I thought there was a weird, interesting thing during that speech that the first thing she says is fate. She says fate and chance, but then she changes it to faith. I was trying to figure out during the movie like what the role of religion was supposed to mean, but I didn't come to any solid conclusions. But it seems like there's something there because it keeps being brought up in the church scene. I don't know anything about Germans and their Lutheranism.
And she says in the movie that the monster is God. She says this. She's found God, and she's with him.
And having sex
the
with
monster.
I kind of like that idea. Like the monster is God. God is fucking me.
And she almost had a monster.
The monster never
Jesus
kills
baby.
anyone, though. We call it a monster because it has tentacles and it looks weird, but she's the one who keeps killing everything. The monster's just sitting there in the apartment.
Yeah. The monster never says anything. It's just kind of like, oh, well, I guess we're going to have sex again. We don't even know if it wants to. Maybe she's making it have sex against its will.
Well, she was on bottom, and it was like doing push-up maneuver. But it could be like an animal, where it doesn't really have consent.
Maybe it just doesn't know what's going on.
Or maybe
Who knows what that monster is.
that's what God's only purpose is creation through sex.
A fuck machine.
God is the ultimate fuck machine.
Sounds like a Trent Reznor. I think we need to wrap it up so Basil can make his movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I mean,
we're
we still have time, but that's fine
We're
if
at
we
about
want to wrap it
55
up
minutes
because
now, so.
I don't know what else to say except for I guess just that the movie does get a lot of mileage out of Isabella Gianni's face. Like that shot that when the private detective like pretends to be the building inspector and comes in and there's just like a really weird zoom in on her eyeballs, like, is really a strange and haunting shot that I was like not expecting in that scene. It just kind of came out of nowhere and she looks so weird and terrified, and it's pretty perfect. I can understand why Can liked her.
Doppelgangers. Any like Vertigo feelings about this movie, or in relationship to Vertigo, as Obsession and Doppelgangers, and any commentary or threads there that anyone wants to pull open?
Do you think Kiyoshi Kurosawa really likes this movie?
He either really likes it or he really hates it. One of the two.
Maybe we could say the same thing about Zulawski and Vertigo. Maybe he really hates it or really likes it.
That's interesting that you bring up Kiyoshi Kurosawa, because I was thinking, like, now that I think about Doppelganger is a movie that takes a hard left in a way that I really enjoyed, as opposed to this one, because up to that point it was just kind of like, oh, it's kind of a creepy, like, he's got a doppelganger movie, but then it takes that turn after he kills the doppelganger, and it's just like a weird, like, comedy with a robot, and
maybe he kills the doppelganger. Maybe the doppelganger kills him.
That's true. You never find that out, but I liked the turn that movie took, and I didn't really like the turn that this movie took. So I guess
I feel like with both of them along the lines of horror being forcing the audience to confront its own expectations, taking a sharp left turn really ties into the idea of horror. Or that's what I wrote about Doppelganger, is that it was the purest horror movie I'd ever seen, because it turned into a comedy for the last time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe this film, Possession, makes me confront my own expectations about what I wanted it to be in the first place, and I ended up not liking it because of that. Because it's like my expectations.
I like the movie.
Well, I
like the movie, but I just want to say that is a dangerous reasoning to throw out there, because you could just say that about any film.
Well, yeah, but I specifically about this one because
it was good because it was bad.
I'm still not saying that I like it. I'm just saying that my expectations going into it was that it was, like, I assumed that it was a supernatural, like, thriller, where it's going to be more dramatic and not just completely off the wall crazy like it was. And I can definitely see merit to your assertion that you think this is more a comedy than it is a horror movie or a suspense thriller.
I think.
I mean, there were parts that I was creeped out during, but I definitely laughed more than I was creeped out.
I think that for me, my expectations were changed a lot, and maybe that's part of why I shut down during a part of the movie, because like the opening is so weirdly psychological, where it's just like getting creepier and creepier with like him doing the like sitting in the chair, just rocking back and forth, and then screaming at each other and like cutting. That I thought it was just gonna like keep going from there, and then when it like veered into like more body horror oriented and like this other thing that was going on, that was sort of when my expectations were changed, and then I was like, oh, okay, so I guess it's not really a psychological horror movie after all. Or at least not at all in the way that I was expecting it to be. But I don't know.
I mean, I guess it just says what I liked and what I wanted out of it. Was my favorite part of the whole film is when the private detective is following her home, and he's like 8 feet behind her, and then he's like sitting on the completely empty subway stop with her, and then he gets on the same subway car as her, and there's the only other person on the subway car is the bum, and the bum just takes the banana out of her groceries and eats it. I love that the bum just like reaches into her groceries without a word, takes out a banana, just starts eating one of her bananas, and she like doesn't care.
I guess I wanted to go over the significance of the title, because apparently the original title, or maybe it's not the original title, but it also has another title, which is The Night the Screaming Stops, which I think sounds, I mean, it's obviously a reference to divorce, I guess, because there's going to be a night when the fighting between the two spouses will stop. And I don't know, I guess maybe the whole thing is like this big, not necessarily a straight up metaphor, but an exploration of those feelings for that whole event of divorce. Because the ending is kind of the ending of the movie. I guess you haven't seen it yet, Basil, but it seems very apocalyptic. There are like air raid sirens going off, and there's weird lights outside the door, and Isabella Adjani as the school teacher is in the apartment with Bob, and then you see like these like hands and arms against their glass door of their apartment. I guess that's I don't know, like the apocalypse being like the end of the relationship, or I don't know exactly what the significance of all of it is, but so I was just trying to puzzle out the significance of the title, both of the titles, I guess.
Well, possession, it seems to be the dual idea of demonic possession and like then possession in terms of like marriage being like one person belongs to you while you're married, you belong to each other, and the idea of like a positive and a negative possession, like we view the long-term lifetime commitment of marriage like as a positive possession, and then when things fall apart, it's kind of like they've been possessed. Those dueling possessions.
I was gonna say that I was really surprised how much I liked Sam Neill in this. Like the part when he goes crazy in the hotel and like grows the beard and stuff. Usually I find him kind of annoying as an actor, but like somehow him just being a crazy person all the time made me like him a lot in this, at least.
Well, I think it's because he's too serious in other stuff, and like he's too stiff, and like just sort of letting him go as over the top as possible like makes him looser and like goofier. I mean, he plays sort of a similar thing in The Mouth of Madness, and I hate that movie and him in it.
Oh, you hate that movie? I haven't seen it. It's one of the few John Carpenter movies that I actually want to see but haven't.
Alright, well, do we have anything else to say about Possession? Yeah.
Reuben is shaking his
We're
head.
all,
I'm gonna
we're all
watch it.
Possession
I will
watch
finish
the rest
it
of
probably.
We're all possessed out.
I had that one thing to say, which is that I thought we had already reached the peak of intense, over-the-top acting, which are, and then Possession just completely flattened it, lapped it,
Yeah.
and over-the-top, intense acting.
It does have intensity, I will give it that.
I'm guessing This Is Not a Film won't continue that trajectory.
Probably not. I don't know, man.
Persian
It's
films
really
aren't really known for their intense acting, generally.
Isn't it Iranian?
Well,
Yeah.
It's
yeah, and it's like a surreptitious documentary too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all shot on like a phone or something, and was like shipped overseas on a USB.
Because he was in prison.
He was in house arrest, yeah. Okay, well, yeah, that's next time. You want to do the sign-off, Reuben?
Okay, for Basil, Patrick, and Reuben, thanks for listening to Loose Canons, and we'll see you next time.